Appropriation 2014-15 Estimates Bill, Committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Appropriation 2014-15 Estimates Bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, Minister. Members, the House in committee for consideration of the Appropriation 2014-15 Estimates Bill. The standing orders provide for 8 hours of debate on the estimates. Each member may have no more than 2 speeches of 5 minutes on each vote. The estimates debate should be relevant to the government's current spending plans as contained in the estimates of appropriations. All votes, except vote state services and vote sport and recreation, are available for debate. The votes will be called in order of seniority of ministers, commencing with the Speaker's votes, except for vote state services and vote sport and recreation, which will be considered at the end of the debate. A compendium of the reports of select committees on the votes is available on the table. So, members, the question is that vote audits stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote Office of the Clerk stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that the vote on the Ombudsman stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote Parliamentary Service stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote Communication Security and Intelligence stand part. The Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr. Speaker, New Zealanders have a lot of unanswered questions about our intelligence and security community. Over the last couple of years, they have been very disturbed at the lack of assurance from the current government about the protection of their privacy online and in cyberspace. They have had grave reservations about the GCSB bill that was passed by this government through this Parliament and the TICS bill, which provides for the intercepts that support it. And at the start of this debate, sir, I want to revive and reaffirm Labor's commitment to 2 things. Firstly, on taking office, a thoroughgoing and urgent review of our entire security establishment. And secondly, an absolute, comprehensive and unshakable commitment to the principle that no New Zealand citizen will be subject to blanket surveillance or any surveillance by a New Zealand security service without a judge's warrant. Without a judge's warrant, no ifs, no buts, no maybes. And so that review will absolutely assure New Zealanders that there are no gaps, workarounds or other exceptions in the legislation that would ever allow such unwarranted surveillance to occur. Mr. Speaker, there's been a great deal of discussion about New Zealand's security arrangements with other countries. This is a sensitive area. So the Labor Party recognises that we live in a complex and dangerous world. We recognise that there is a legitimate and appropriate place for well-governed security services. But, sir, we do not accept that as a member of an international agreement which governs these services, that we should or could give a blank cheque to our partners to use New Zealand-sourced intelligence in any way they see fit. It is absolutely appropriate that this government is transparent with New Zealanders about the governance arrangements and policies within limits and within the need for operational sensitivity which govern the use of New Zealand-sourced intelligence. Mr. Speaker, New Zealanders are rightly concerned that our security establishment is not up to snuff. Today, the government has released, and it's on the State Services Commission website, the Performance Improvement Framework for the agencies of the New Zealand intelligence community. And for an unclassified document, it is a remarkably interesting one. On business strategy and operating model, the reviewers say that the establishment needs to, 1, clarify priorities and the scope of the securities agency's role. In other words, they're in a muddle. They don't know what their priorities are and they're ineffective.
Who's the minister?
And who's the minister? The Prime Minister. Secondly, ensure that the intelligence community works effectively together, the conclusion being that currently it does not. 3, establish customer-driven priorities and practices. They make the point that if nobody uses their reports, they are not worth producing, and note that there is a huge gap between the level of interaction between community partners such as New Zealand companies and the agencies in New Zealand and their analogous agencies in the UK or Australia. It says that basic business systems are, quote, weak and require attention. Financial management and control systems have not been maintained. For goodness sake, these are supposed to be some of the most sophisticated agencies in the New Zealand government. They can barely run their own budgets. They can barely run their own budgets, sir. Establish a common workforce plan. Ensure continued legal compliance. Well, there the rubber meets the road, because the GCSB could not even in its last annual report get to within about 50% accuracy of the number of intercepts it's actually done. It was out by a factor of 2, Mr. Speaker. Unbelievable. And the Auditor General was called in to explain why our spies couldn't count to 50. It's embarrassing, Mr. Speaker, and the Minister for Security and Intelligence should be able to take a call right now and explain to the House why some of the most sophisticated agencies in the country cannot count past 2 hands and 2 feet. It's not good enough, Mr. Speaker, and it's not good enough, Minister. Improve the public mandate. Well, there's an understatement, Mr. Speaker. The agencies concerned don't have one because the government's policies are not clear, robust and transparent.
The question is that vote, communication, security and intelligence stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. For the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote, Prime Minister and Cabinet stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote, security, intelligence stand part of the schedules. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question is that vote, tourism stand part of the schedules.
Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Todd McLean.
Mr. Chair, thank you. It gives me pleasure to take a call on this part of the debate on tourism. And the reason for that is tourism is so very important to our country. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, so important to our country that the Prime Minister himself decided to give it